Point of no return. Ukraine's democracy under threat. As new bill guts anti-corruption efforts. Unfortunately, this story is not developing in a very positive direction. Dark times ahead. Peak of corruption. Point of no return. Those are basically things that the Kyiv Independent has been warning about for a few days now. I've had conversation about this with people here, and things are not looking super great on this front. But okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. It is a complicated issue, after all. Ukrainian society sounded a code red for the country's democracy on July 22nd, as the final votes were tallied on a bill in Ukraine's parliament that strips independence from anti-corruption bodies. In other words, independent anti-corruption organizations that are supposed to keep tabs on the government when it comes to corruption. And the problem lies with the fact that the organization that is supposed to keep tabs on the government is now being directly under the jurisdiction of the government. And I think you understand the problem. I don't think I have to go into it any deeper. I think you all know why it's a problem that the organization that is supposed to audit the government is now under the direct control of said government. Many describe the new legislative changes as gutting a decade of hard-fought reforms and Many describe the new legislative changes as gutting a decade of hard-fought reforms and reverting to the notorious era of high corruption under former President Viktor Yanukovych. I think it is a little bit premature to say that, but things are not well. It is not well that the government has decided to render these organizations worthless. Apparently, there have been foul actors within the organizations. The organizations themselves have apparently been compromised. They had Russian spies and Russian affiliated people in them, but the problem is that if you have Russian affiliated people or /spies in an organization, you get rid of the people, okay? You get rid of the specific people, not gut an entire organization. So that is definitely, it feels like just an opportunity to get rid of those organizations, which, as you may imagine, I am not the biggest fan of, and neither are people of Ukraine. So, hard-fought reforms, reverting to the notorious era of high corruption under former President Viktor Yanukovych that sparked the deadly Euromaidan protests in 2013-2014. And that is exactly true. You can still read the testimonies of people that described how furious they were, how much of seething anger against the government they had during that era of the end of 2013. There was a man that described his mom being ill and in the hospital and impossible bills being imposed on him in bribes. People being forced to close their businesses because they could not afford to pay off the militia people to pay them bribes. It was a very, very different time. Ukraine has gone a long way to combat corruption. You cannot even fathom how far Ukraine has come if you don't know how bad the situation was even in 2013 and 14 compared to now. Since then, major anti-corruption reforms have been implemented. Oh, and of course, the country being in a state of corruption was very beneficial for Russia. I don't think that needs to be said. I don't think it needs saying that instability within the country was very much to the benefit of Russian control, which it exerted at that time via Yanukovych, for example. Since then, a major anti-corruption reforms have been implemented as part of the country's efforts to integrate with Europe, including in response to requirements by the International Monetary Fund and the European Union. Some feared that the new bill could jeopardize the country's ties to the West and crucial financial support. And yes, this move by the Ukrainian government to butcher those organizations, I'll just say butcher, have raised alarms in the European Union. That is also a factor that also might actually jeopardize or really put it might be an obstacle to Ukraine joining the European Union. I'm not going to pretend that it's not a possibility. So yeah. Yes. It might jeopardize the country's ties to the West and crucial financial support. Everything is now being rolled back. Svetlana Matvienko, executive director of the Ukrainian nonprofit agency for legislative initiatives, told the Kyiv Independent shortly after the bill passed. These tactics aren't new in Ukraine's history. They echo the Prosecutor General's office under Yanukovych, when a single official could determine the outcome of any case, and the prosecutional system serves political interests rather than justice. The new legislation gives the Prosecutor General powerful authority over the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, NABU, which NABU apparently was compromised, and that is the excuse used for giving that huge authority was that there were many bad actors within NABU, but that is not the way to fix a problem, okay? It feels more like just a pathway to do something more nefarious than fixing the problem. This looks bad internally, this looks bad externally. This is just a very bad situation all around. I'm not gonna mince words here. The new legislation gives the Prosecutor General powerful authority, we've already read that, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, STAPO. NABU is responsible for investigating and building major corruption cases, which are then prosecuted by STAPO. Both bodies were set up in the wake of the Euromaidan movement, with the cooperation of international partners, and are designed to operate beyond the influence of political interference. Well, that has changed. That has changed drastically. What does Zelensky say about it? He signed it. That was the whole tension. That was the whole point of the protests. The bill passed the Verkhovna Rada, and the ball was in Zelensky's court, basically. He had the opportunity to veto it, but he did not. He signed it. So the bill will come into play. That is basically what will happen. It's something the European Union cannot afford to ignore, and it will impact how Ukraine is perceived, including our prospects for integration. Yeah, that is a big factor. It was a big factor for Poland as well when it was trying to get into the European Union. So definitely it is something that will hamper the efforts to join. And it will give ammunition also to opponents of Ukraine, such as Hungary and Slovakia, to say, see, it is a very corrupt country. It is a country that perpetuates corruption. We cannot let them in, which will be ironic coming from Hungary, but they will still say it. So Orban will say it. Under the new law, the Prosecutor General, who is appointed by the President, has the ability to access and reassign case files, issue binding instructions to investigators, and unilaterally close cases, among other powers, which is crazy. Imagine if the organization has a case against the government and the government basically says, oh yeah, we're closing this case against us. I think you can imagine why that would be a problem, right? If the government can just shut down cases against itself. This isn't just a concern. It's a fundamental shift that strikes at the heart of democracy. Inna Sovsun, a lawmaker from the Holos opposition party, told the Kyiv Independent, it's something the EU can't afford to ignore, and it will impact how Ukraine is perceived, including our prospects for reintegration. The bill was passed with the support of 263 lawmakers, with 13 members voting against the bill and 13 abstaining. The bill then headed to Zelensky's desk, where he signed it. The moves come a day after the European Union and the G7 expressed concerns over Ukraine's security service carrying out more than 70 searches of locations linked to Nabu, moves that were criticized by civil society activists as an attempt to intimidate and dismantle anti-corruption efforts, although there were apparently some legitimate concerns over the organizations being compromised. That is something that is being claimed, although I cannot speak to the validity of those claims. And even if those claims were legitimate, the solution to the problem would not be to gut the organizations themselves. The Kyiv Independent reached out to various figures in Ukrainian society to understand how they see this law and what it means for their country's future. Yaroslav Hristak, historian, I may exaggerate, but this decision can amount to a coup d'etat, not in terms of change of power, but in terms of how the principles of power should operate. A sound state cherishes independence of its institutions. This one curtails it. This power is sick, and it reveals its sickness at the most crucial moment of the war. It is dangerous, it is depressing, it is suicidal. Volodymyr Ariev, lawmaker for the European Solidarity Opposition Party. I see Zelensky and his team don't give a flying fuck about Ukraine's European integration. This vote is a U-turn to the model of Ruski Mir, Russian world, and a threat to all achievements in pro-EU reforms. Independence of both bodies is the key to our European Union membership, and it was just broken. By the way, among the things that the protesters were chanting today at the protest, and I am going to attend the protest again tomorrow, was, we are Ukraine, we are not Russia. This is Ukraine, this is not Russia, was among the chants. Senior surgeon with the 38th Marine Brigade deployed in the Pokrovsk sector. Like, basically all members of society are angry about this move. Civilians, soldiers, what have you, they are all angry about this. If Zelensky signs it, I think we will lose global support as such. The destruction of the controlling body of the corruption component is needed only to steal with impunity. No one will support such a country. Unfortunate. So as you can see, this is quite a serious situation and could have really serious repercussions. An employee within SAPO whose name was withheld as they are not authorized to speak publicly. The anti-corruption system after the Revolution of Dignity has not yet encountered such a reversal of reform. Many experts will agree that dark times await us all. Many of Ukraine's reform commitments relate to the fight against corruption, and the reversal of reforms threatens the Western path of the state. But we are optimistically forward-looking. No one is going to back down from the mission. We rely on and are guided only by facts. Very good. Very good. Have to be looking forward, have to be looking towards solution to this, because giving up is not an option. Ukraine cannot go backwards. The threat is extraordinary, events are happening quickly and are causing concern. We are discussing it. What will happen next, we will see. Well, there are protests. There are protests happening in Kyiv as we speak, and there will be protests again tomorrow. Yep, definitely. But keep in mind, Ukraine, I think it is very good that people of Ukraine do not just want the war to end on good terms. People of Ukraine also want Ukraine itself to emerge from all these events as a healthy democracy, which is a good sign. Do you not think? Anastasia Radina, chairperson of Parliament's Anti-Corruption Committee and member of Zelensky's Servant of the People Party. The threat has already been fulfilled. The building is not just on fire, it's burned to embers already. It is important to understand that NABU and SAP are not just some abbreviations. They are not just some law enforcement agency in Ukraine. These are the bodies that were created from scratch as a response to the Revolution of Dignity in order to entrust the fight against corruption to a new separate body, untainted by old corruption practices. It is a terrible shame. Yaroslav Yurchyshin, a member of parliament from the Holos opposition party. This will finally destroy the independence of the anti-corruption infrastructure. The Prosecutor General, 100% the President's man, will decide who and what cases will be investigated, who and how will provide procedural support from the Prosecutor's Office. Therefore, we should expect the closure of a number of high-profile cases, such as the Chernysov case, which we'll take a look at right now. Anti-corruption agencies seek Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister's suspension amid land grab case. There you go. Sergei Fursa, an expert with Dragon Capital, a leading Ukrainian investment bank. After what happened, we can expect anything because indeed the Ukrainian authorities have thus crossed all possible red lines, violating all obligations undertaken within the framework of cooperation with the International Monetary Fund, with the European Union, within the framework of European integration, and even violating the conditions of madness. Because now, after this, nothing is impossible. After this, and this creates very significant risks for the country. Like, we don't know what will happen. Like, we honestly do not know what will happen now. There is a possibility that things will there is a possibility that things will move to a positive direction and these organizations will simply be replaced with something else because they were compromised or something. But I am not holding my breath, but I also am not pretending to know exactly what will happen. I'm not pretending to know if the protest, for example, will have any effect or not, and what the government will decide to do moving forward. Like, I can speculate, but I cannot say that I know. Nabu hunted for the top officials for the biggest corruption years, not for the heads of some regional courts or what have you. And the results of their activity became, I think, what we are holding on to today. If Nabu is rendered ineffective, there will be anti-corruption activity, but what will remain is anti-corruption activity against low-level people. Top corruption years will be able to get away with anything, and for everyone else, the law, and moreover the law, in selective application. Slitvana Matvienko. Everything is now being rolled back. These tactics are new in Ukraine's history. They echo the Prosecutor General's office under Yanukovych, when a single official could determine the outcome of any case, and the prosecutional system served political interests rather than justice. This draft law risks slowing Ukraine's EU accession talks and jeopardizing critical financial aid. More importantly, it marks a potential point of no return, both for prosecution reform and for the broader structure of the rule of law in Ukraine. Today, the country has lost not its anti-corruption. Today, the country has lost not just anti-corruption institutions, but also the trust it has painstakingly built since 2014. This is happening now because July is a difficult month for public administration. People are tired. International partners are on vacation. It's the perfect time for radical decisions that have been simmering for a while. Ihor Lachenkov. We're gonna see a lot of opinions, okay? But I think that's good. I think it's good that you're seeing a lot of different opinions. I think it's painting a picture. Today, the Verkhovna Rada voted for the law that effectively destroys the independence of Nabu and Sapo. This is absolutely unacceptable in our time. We're moving toward the EU, and Ukraine has worked on these institutions for years. That we see that as soon as these institutions started targeting people close to the president, they were immediately attacked. This threatens to bring about full manual control over the cases and protection of a certain circle of people. There will be selective justice. Some media scoundrels will be jailed, but friends or powerful people won't. Daria Kalenyuk, Executive Director of the Anti-Corruption Action Center. It is the demolition of independent anti-corruption institutions which we've been building for the last 10 years since the Revolution of Dignity, and it's reinstating the Prosecutor General's full control over all the top proceedings of high-level corruption. Since 2014, we've been building instruments and tools to make sure that the Prosecutor General is not able to control these proceedings. This is how the Specialized Corruption Prosecution was created. And now the Prosecutor General can order Nabu and Sapo which cases to investigate, which cases to stop, and what to do in proceedings, which is, I think, I don't have to explain again why this is just unacceptable, right? Irina Fries, a lawmaker from the European Solidarity Opposition Party. This is a terrible strategic mistake in passing this law. I'm 100% convinced this does not contribute to our European integration. There is only one way to prevent the adopted bill from coming into force: a presidential veto. That ship has sailed. Zelensky has already signed the bill. Like, when these testimonies have been gathered, Zelensky still had the opportunity to veto the bill. He did not do so. He signed it, which will definitely affect tomorrow's protest, I assume. but I doubt he will impose a veto on this bill, considering that all the coordination of what happened today and around this bill in the hall was from the president's office. See, people are saying that Zelensky is not some innocent bystander, that he was a very active participant of events. Therefore, unfortunately, I do not delude myself with illusions that President Zelensky is capable of adequately assessing the risks from such a step for his directly image career, for his directly image career, and including historical one. So there we have it. This is what's happening. This is the situation. We will read a bit of a different article now, but I am worried. I am worried about what's going to happen. I am worried about this sudden move that has been at a time like this, when this is the crucial part of the war. Russia has been ramping up attacks against Ukraine. Support is not guaranteed by any means. Trump has been making some shifts towards supporting Ukraine, but that's never guaranteed. And now this happens. We are having protests throughout the country. Things are not good. Things are not good. I do like the fact that Ukrainian society does not accept things like this, does not accept rolling back on corruption, but this is a very bad time for something like this to happen. This is a time when everyone should be united against the single enemy, which is Russia. It is a time when unification is very important, and a thing like this destroys unification. It destroys the people's trust in the government. It just destabilizes Ukraine. And during a crucial time of the war, destabilize Ukraine is just not acceptable. All right, let's see. Veto the law, protests held across Ukraine after parliament passes bill weakening anti-corruption institutions. So that is the protest that I have attended. Don't push the cringe. There were many protesters. People shouted things like Haniba, which means disgrace. People shouted things like this is Ukraine, this is not Russia. People were hoping that Zelensky would veto the bill, that Zelensky would listen to the protesters, and that the bill will not come to pass. Unfortunately, that has not happened. The protesters' voices have been completely ignored. And the bill has been signed by Zelensky. Hello, Greater. It is very nice to see you here as always. I am always very happy to see you. Napping is good. I've not been feeling very well today. I've been feeling very unwell physically. Quite unwell. But I still went to a protest, so I guess I still have it in me to go and observe people protesting. The dismantling of key safeguards protecting Nabu's independence is a serious step back, Kos wrote on X. Independent bodies like NABU and SAPO are essential for Ukraine's EU path. Rule of law remains in the very center of EU's accession negotiations, and I know that because Poland has went through that path, and Poland had to fight its corruption. The changes would amount to the destruction of NABU and SAPO's independence and practically subordinate their activities to the prosecutors general. Ukraine's anti-corruption infrastructure built since 2015 will be destroyed, the agency added. Editorial. Zelensky is one signature away from betraying Ukraine's democracy. That ship has sailed, so we are now going to the editorial. Zelensky just betrayed Ukraine's democracy and everyone fighting for it. Last week we warned of coming anti-democratic backslide. Now we see it happening. And I really hope that this whole thing will somehow reverse in a better direction because things are really not well. Whatever. It's an engagement, Estelle. Listen, I'm a very small streamer. So any person that is here and boosts engagement is, just like whatever. They haven't thrown any slurs yet, so. A parliamentary vote led by President Volodymyr Zelensky's lawmakers today took away the independence of Ukraine's key anti-corruption bodies, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, and Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO. Zelensky signed it into law the same day. Under the new law, the Prosecutor General, a notoriously non-independent figure, will now oversee anti-corruption investigations in a complete overturn of the system that was set up to be independent from other law enforcement bodies. In reality, it means that Zelensky's office will be able to stop investigations with a phone call. The move isn't an isolated incident, but a part of a massive crackdown. The vote in parliament followed an unprecedented wave of raids on dozens of NABU officers' homes the day before, where pretexts for searches ranged from drug trafficking accusations to car accidents from 4 years ago. Okay, that's just far-fetched. The NABU chief said some searches got violent. A local media outlet reported that officers forced open a NABU detective's eyes to unlock his phone, set on face recognition. It also closely follows an escalated prosecution of Ukraine's best-known anti-corruption activist, an outspoken critic of Zelensky. This crackdown is being carried out by law enforcement agencies, lawmakers, and people controlled by President Zelensky. There is no second guessing who is responsible for this. President Zelensky is making a choice to undermine Ukrainian democratic institutions in pursuit of expanding his personal power, which is also something that was a fear for a while now. But this could have very negative repercussions for Ukraine. And Ukrainian people are very well aware of it, which is why they're out there on the streets protesting right now. A protest that I have attended for a brief time. If I had any sort of press credentials with me on me, I would have stayed. I would have stayed through the night. But unfortunately, I'm just a foreigner without any credentials right now. So the smart move was for me to come home for tonight. But I will attend the protest tomorrow. Why do it now? The attacked anti-corruption agencies have been a nuisance for the political elite, as they should be. They have investigated Zelensky's party's lawmakers and the president's close associates, but just weeks ago, they went after his personal friend, then Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Chernyshov, making him a suspect in a land grab case. There is talk of other close associates of Zelensky that detectives were investigating. In other words, they were doing exactly what they were set up for, independently investigating top-level corruption. It's worth remembering that Ukraine's anti-corruption infrastructure was set up in the years following the 2013-2014 Euromaidan revolution. It was one of the wins of the democratic pro-Western movement that overthrew the corrupt pro-Russian president. Over 100 protesters were killed before the revolution prevailed. I'm a historian, Polish. I'm a historian and I'm also Polish, so I know about. Why are you talking about this now? But you're being ridiculous. I'm sorry. You're being silly. You're talking to a Polish Jewish trans historian. I am well aware of what transpired during World War II. It took the lives of these protesters and years of work that followed to set up independent anti-corruption infrastructure in Ukraine, a major achievement for the young democracy. Now President Zelensky is seeking to dismantle it to protect his associates and expand his power. The backdrop of the war is hugely helpful for this matter. Under martial law, there are no elections, and perhaps more importantly, there have been no mass street protests, which is changing. Okay, people are not afraid. People are used to the raids now. People are not afraid to go out to the streets and protest for their rights. So that is a thing that is worth remembering. There have been a lot of protests today. I'm sorry, what? Are you talking to me? You keep using Zion. What does it mean to you? What do you mean? What? Oh, I've been on Top Chat. Listen, Estelle, when you think this person goes too far, you can ban them. You have my blessing. I trust your judgment as a mod. No engagement is worth whatever this is. Okay, let's see. Many of the people, okay, there have been no mass street protests. That is starting to change. Many of the most politically active Ukrainians, patriotic and uncompromising, are serving on the front lines or have been killed fighting. The first anti-government protests since the start of the war are taking place right now as we are running this editorial, and I've attended the protest. They are a reaction to today's vote and have likely slowed down Zelensky's signing of the bill, which he signed anyway. And tomorrow will be round 2 of the protests. No, well, the protests are continuing. The protesters have ignored curfew to protest. I returned home because I'm a foreigner and I don't have press credentials on me. Okay, I still have to get them. So I am in a more delicate position, I think. So I just returned to my base for now. But I've been told that the protests will continue tomorrow at 8 p.m. No, no. Once he signed it, he signed it. He could either sign it or veto it. He cannot veto it anymore. It is signed. Those are the options before the president. He can sign or veto. Same as in Poland, by the way. It is the same as in Poland. I'm hoping for some restrict. I'm hoping for the protests to pressure the government to do some restructurization of the. I'm hoping that this was reversed. Okay, I'm hoping that the any problems with the organizations will be fixed, but I'm hoping that the protesters will be able to get a win of restoring the independence of those organizations. I know that I should not be super hopeful about it, but I try to be optimistic in life. Yeah, of course, they should have been reformed, but they should not have been gutted completely. Ridiculous. It is possible to condition Ukrainian leadership in a way that protects democracy but doesn't undermine Ukraine's defense against Russia. But there is one other source of oversight, the West, and it needs to use its leverage to help Ukraine stay a democracy. And I'm hoping that exact thing will happen, actually. I am hoping that the West will not just close its eyes and pretend nothing's happening for the sake of convenience, which is not something that is it is something that Europe has done in the past and the West in general. So historically, Ukraine's Western partners, the US and the EU, have been a key force pushing reluctant Ukrainian officials to carry out reforms, including the anti-corruption and law enforcement sector, using the leverage of financial aid to condition Ukrainians to move. It was a simple deal. Western aid comes in return for democratic progress. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine's partners have largely refrained from pushing for reforms. Yep. See, this is a problem. This is a big problem. It is time now to push for reforms once more. The war and having a smooth relationship with Ukraine's leadership have been made a priority. When a conversation is already awkward due to refusal to supply their requested weapons, the West is reluctant to further sour it with nods at failed reforms. Supporting democracy in Ukraine is a task that can wait till after the war. That seemed to be the approach. This strategy has proven wrong, and it has led to today's dangerous backslide. The lack of interest from across the ocean has played a key role too. US President Donald Trump's administration isn't one to defend anti-corruption reforms, and only reluctantly pays attention to Ukraine at all. Evidently, certain actors in Ukraine perceived it as a free pass from Washington. It's not too late for Western partners to step in. It's possible to condition Ukrainian leadership in a way that protects democracy but doesn't undermine Ukraine's defense against Russia. Military aid to Ukraine shouldn't be conditioned. The survival of Ukraine and its defenders remain the number one priority, but it will be hard for foreign governments to find domestic support for such aid if Ukraine is allowed to slide into autocracy. The same man who represents Ukraine's fight against Russia can represent the destruction of Ukraine's democracy. Even true supporters of Ukraine in Western governments need to signal to Ukrainian leadership that the backslide is noted and won't go without consequences. If there is no such reaction, there is no reason to think that the backslide will stop. There are other elements of the anti-corruption infrastructure that can be dismantled, such as the High Anti-Corruption Court. And next on the menu, independent Ukrainian media. Ukraine's democracy can still be salvaged. In peacetime, that responsibility would fall on the Ukrainian people. But today, Ukrainians are fighting and dying for Europe and the whole free world. Will the West hold the line for them?